Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about Moscow. Today, Russia has given the US a list of targets that Ukraine attacked during the 30-day ceasefire. A second meeting is being prepared. That was stated by Lavrov. The list of targets that Ukraine has attacked was given to Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Trump aide Mike Waltz. Moscow continues to comply with the agreement despite violations by Kiev. A second meeting Russia and the United States is being prepared. Lavrov says the US desire to remove obstacles to the work of diplomats. The US is studying Russia's proposal on the Black Sea Initiative. So this is the information we are receiving from the Russian Federation. We see that as for now the Russians are not going to quit the ceasefire process completely, but the Russians send a clear signal that if the situation continues developing the same way, most likely they will quit this process. Another important statement came from Donald Trump. Trump administration says Ukraine ceasefire unlikely in next few months. The Trump administration is discussing the possibility that the US will not be able to achieve a peace deal in the next few months. They are developing new plans to put pressure on both Kiev and Moscow. There is a growing likelihood that the war will drag on and Ukraine will need more Western support for its military operation. When talking about the Western support, we see that there are no problems from the United States of America and the Western countries. Today we got very interesting article that was published by the Russian sources. Transits via Rzeszów have intensified. Rzeszów is a very important military hub in the southeastern part of Poland that the Western countries and NATO use to supply and support Ukraine with everything Ukraine needs. As we and many colleagues have noted, military aid deliveries to Ukraine have resumed in full. The Polish air base in Rzeszów has resumed operations as in the most active years of Western support for Ukraine. From March 24th to March 30, Western countries made 16 flights to Rzeszów in Poland, during which about 550,000 tons of military cargo were delivered. So we see that the Western countries are in a hurry. They try to rearm Ukraine as soon as possible. And the thing is that according to different sources, Russia is preparing offensive. Russia is preparing a major offensive. Secretary of the Verkhovna Rada Committee. The Secretary of the Verkhovna Rada Committee on National Security commented on Western media reports about Russia preparing such an offensive in the coming weeks. According to Kostyantynivka, Russian troops will not be ready before mid to late summer. The Russian armed forces are creating new units and formations, but are unlikely to be ready for an offensive in the near future, he added. Recall that Zelensky said yesterday that Russia is preparing to go on the offensive before the end of the spring. So a lot of updates, a lot of different statements, so we can make a conclusion that somewhere between the end of April and the end of July, the Russians will carry out a very powerful, a major offensive from their side. Maybe there are going to be several offensive operations. Another important is that the Minister of Defense of Ukraine reported today on contacts with their partners, in particular with the American side. The Ukrainians have provided all necessary information about Russian violation in the energy sector. So we see that both the Russians and the Ukrainians provided the United States of America a lot of data regarding violations in the energy sector. So we see that both the Russians and the Ukrainians are breaking this ceasefire process. Furthermore, Trump moved away from criticizing Putin and attacked Zelensky. Trump moderated his criticism of the Russian president and instead accused Ukraine of trying to revise an economic agreement with the United States of America. Note that today we have also lots of very interesting updates from the United States of America. We see that the United States of America wants to finish the war in Ukraine as soon as possible. And today we got report that Fox News, citing an informed source, Trump is upset with Putin and believes Russia is stalling on ceasefire talks with Ukraine. Fox News, citing an informed source, banning Russia's shadow fleet carrying inflict oil through the Baltic Sea will be an easy target for Russia Russia. Furthermore, according to information we have, US senators threatened to impose 500% tariffs on countries purchasing Russian oil, gas and uranium if Moscow refuses peace talks. We understand that currently the United States of America is in a hurry because a very huge, probably major war is going to start in the Middle East in the very near future. According to information we have, the United States of America continued the regrouping. We have updated map of warship operating in the Red Sea, Gulf of Oman, Gulf of Aden, the Persian Gulf and the Arabian Sea. The United States of America is concentrating the significant number of forces in this area. As for now, nobody says what's exactly the United States of America are going to do in this region, but several military experts believe that the United States of America and Israel are going to start war with Iran if they don't start support the Houthis on the territory of Yemen. Furthermore, according to information we have, during the previous days, the United States of America have redeployed a significant number of forces to their air bases in this area. The United States is moving 2 Patriot air defense batteries and 1 THAAD missile defense system battery from the US Indo-Pacific Command area of the responsibility to the Central Command area, the Pentagon reported. It is highly likely that the systems will be deployed in areas where the US Army is stationed in the Middle East. Furthermore, according to information we have, 6 B-2 strategic bombers of the 509th Bomb Wing of US Air Force Global Strike Command fly at Diego Garcia Air Base April 1st. At the moment, there is the third of all B-2s in the 509th Air Wing. According to some sources, the number of spirits at the base may be 7 units. So we see that the preparations are ongoing, so that is why the United States of America wants to finish the war in Ukraine as soon as possible, because they understand that this is going to be very difficult to support both wars, war in Ukraine and the war in the Middle East. Now let's return back to Ukraine. During the previous 24 hours, during the previous night, we received lots of very important updates. Once again, both the Russians and the Ukrainians resumed their attacks with drones. The Russians were attacking Ukraine. We received lots of videos from the city of Odessa. Here we can see lots of explosions that took place during the previous night. The Russians were attacking the city of Odessa with a significant number of drones. Furthermore, according to information we have, the Russians attacked the city of Kharkiv. Another batch of videos we got from this territory. Here we can see how civilians were filming explosions from their windows, from their houses. The Russians, according to information we have, attacked different military objects and military facilities, probably some plants that Ukrainians were using to produce weapons. As for the Ukrainian side, they also attacked. Today we got lots of videos from the city of Taganrog, which is located on the way to the city of Rostov-on-Don. Here we can see the consequences of Ukrainian attack on the city with drones, and furthermore Ukrainians attacked also the city of Kursk. So we see that after a very short pause, both sides, the Russians and the Ukrainians, resumed their attacks deep inside of the territories of each other. We believe that these attacks will only intensify. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground, and first let's talk about the Zaporozhye direction. According to information we have, during the previous 24 hours, the Russians managed to improve their position significantly in the settlement of Lobkove. Today we have video. We will add this video in a minute, and in this video that took place exactly in this point, the Russians were taking lots of Ukrainians, captured lots of Ukrainians. Based on this video, we came to conclusion that probably around 80% or even 90% of Lobkove was already taken and captured by the Russians. We see that the Russians continue their offensive operation, and most likely after the settlement of Lobkove, the Russians will continue offensive in the southeastern part of the settlement of Kamenskaya. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the vicinity of the settlement of Burlatska and Velika Novoselovka direction. According to information we have, the Russians managed to improve their position significantly and to take additional 3 lines and the fortifications of the armored forces of Ukraine under control. In this video we can see how the Russians landed infantry along another 3 line, and then the Ukrainians began bombing and attacking the Russian units with FPV drones and with artillery. Based on this video we have adjusted the map, we have colored fields in the Russian favor. The Russians established complete control over the village of Shevchenka. Lots of drones are flying above this territory, not allowing the Ukrainians to be flexible, mobile, and to prepare defense before possible Russian offensive in this direction. So we see that the Russians are advancing. The Ukrainians made lots of statements regarding the situation, and the Ukrainians are saying that in the direction of Kamar, events are not developing in the best way. After the loss of Dnipro Energy and Burlatsky, the Russian forces are now advancing along both banks of the Mokry Yal river. So the Ukrainians are saying that the Russians now are advancing in the northern direction using the eastern and the western banks of the river of Mokry Yal, and the village of Kamar is the main task of the Russians for the near future. Now let's discuss the situation in the Bohatyr direction. The Russians, according to information we have, managed to improve their position significantly after the fall of the village of Rozhye. This is the situation by the end of the 1st of April, and this is the situation by the beginning of the 2nd of April. As you can see, according to different mappers, the Russians improved their positions, and the Russians are trying to shorten the distance to the village of Bohatyr. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in Novopavlovka direction. During the previous 24 hours, the Russians improved their positions. We have several videos that confirm Russian progress on the ground in the direction of the last settlements on the Novopavlovka direction that are located on the territory of Donetsk region. So the Russians are getting closer and closer to the border between the regions, and in the very near future, most likely the border will be crossed and taken by the Russians, and this is going to be the beginning of the battle for the Dnipro region, which is obviously not something good from the media perspective for the Ukrainians. Now let's move further. The Ukrainians resumed their counterattacks in the salient in the vicinity of Pokrovsk. Today the Russian sources published video how they were after withdrawing the Ukrainians in the armed forces of Ukraine that managed to capture several strongholds around the settlement of Kotlina. This is another proof that the situation is very difficult and that Ukrainians continue their attempts to cut the salient between the villages of Pishchane and Novovasilievka. This is the vital question for the Ukrainians before the beginning of the major battle. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Kostyantynivka direction, where the Russians continue their offensive operation. The Russians are about to finish their regrouping in the vicinity of Toretsk. The Russians managed to bring their heavy artillery systems very close to the line of combat contact, and the Russians began bombing and attacking the Ukrainian positions with thoughtful and thorough systems, preparing this foothold before further offensive operation. In the very near future, we expect a Russian attempt to attack towards these facilities. If the Russians establish control over these facilities, this is going to be complete collapse of Ukrainian defense. The Russians continue bombing and attacking the positions of Ukrainians in the vicinity of Kostyantynivka. Today we got lots of videos how the Russians were bombing and attacking the positions of the armed forces of Ukraine, basically around the city of Kostyantynivka itself. We believe that the Russians during the previous days managed to improve their positions much better in comparison with the current situation that you can see in front of your screen. As for now, we don't have geolocations, but we believe that the changes took place during the previous days. Now let's discuss the situation in the Liman direction. The Russians, according to information we have, managed to improve their positions and to take under control additional positions of the armed forces of Ukraine. So the dynamic in this area is very big. Almost every single day we adjust the map in the Russian favor. For example, this is the situation by the end of the 29th of March, and we see that the Russians were moving, and by the end of the 1st of April we have adjusted huge territory in the Russian favor to the west of Lobkove, and by the beginning of the 2nd of April the Russians managed to establish complete control over the forest in the vicinity of Lobkove and to capture another stronghold. So there are not much left, not so many strongholds left ahead of the Russians, and every day we see the Russians improving their positions. The Ukrainians currently can't stabilize the situation. They're trying to do everything they can, but we see that this is not enough. When talking about the northern Kupiansk direction, during the previous 24 hours we got another update that the Russians indeed managed to improve their position significantly in the vicinity of Kondrashovka, and in the very near future most likely the Russians will answer the village itself. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching, subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.